Hello and welcome to another video in the training series of videos on how to be successful in multi-level marketing. This is presentation 4 and it's titled Digging Down to Bedrock. I'm Rob Lemke. I'm a lifestyle trainer with approximately 20 years of experience in network marketing. So hopefully I can bring that experience to bear as we go through these slides together. If you're ready to go, I'm also ready to go. Is that a yes? Then let's head into these slides and see what we can learn today. Are you with me? Let's go. So I want to talk to you today about staying power or resilience or the ability of a building to stay for a long time in the city where it's built, particularly a skyscraper. Okay, so if we just focus in on Manhattan for a minute, when you go down beneath the ground of Manhattan, you'll find 3 layers of bedrock in Manhattan, and they're made up of these 3 different stones. One is called Manhattan schist, the other one is called inwood marble, and the third one is called Fordham gneiss, sorry, with I before E, Fordham gneiss. And with these 3 stones, they are all an average of 450 million years old, and they've been around through thick and thin. They're able to withstand earthquakes and everything else that's thrown at them. And it's also the place, Manhattan, where the world's oldest skyscraper happens to be. It sits on Beekman Street in the financial district of Manhattan. And the name of the building is the Temple Port Building. It was constructed in 1881. It happens to be the oldest surviving skyscraper in the whole world. It's 140 years old. Okay. We also have a skyscraper over here in Dubai. It's called the Dubai World Trade Center. That's our oldest skyscraper, and just as a comparison, it's 42 years old. It's built in completed in 1979. So we have 2 different skyscrapers here, both staying for a long time already in the world. One has been built into bedrock, and the other one has a different way of doing foundation, but they both have something in common, is that the construction workers that have built both of these had to do one thing first before they started building up, and that was to build down. That means that whenever a construction project on a skyscraper starts, the first thing they do is excavate, and they go down to the bedrock, or they go down, for example, as far as they can in order to ensure that they have an engineered system that will be able to withstand years and years of earth movement and all the other things that are thrown at buildings in terms of natural disasters and things like that. So in that case, you have buildings that survive 140 years and 42 years over here in Dubai so far, right? Below each of those skyscrapers, there has to be a foundation that's strong enough to support it. And before ever building up, as I mentioned, the construction teams have to dig down and excavate and then build that foundation and start to build up to ground level and then build from there. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, and that's what drives this whole presentation, is this analogy of building a skyscraper. Now, we come to one of the most famous, let's say, skyscrapers, or it holds the title of being the tallest in the world right now. The tallest skyscraper in the world is the Burj Khalifa. Burj Khalifa, and this is also over here in Dubai. So what did it take to build that foundation? Well, they took concrete and formed it into piles, and then at the top of the piles they put a heavy 12-meter thick concrete plate that sat on the piles, and that acts as their bedrock foundation. And that took approximately 110,000 tons of concrete and steel to make up those 192 piles, which had to be buried into the ground 164 foot deep, or if you prefer the metric, it's 50 meters deep. So you can imagine what has to be done before you can even start to build, is to dig down 164 feet and beyond to get those piles into the correct place, and then start to build the table on top of the piles, etc., etc. Okay? And the time taken to build that foundation, it totaled up at the end to 14 million man-hours. And that equates to, with 1,000 people on your crew, it took them 3.86 years to build that foundation. And look at the next statement there, is that it took them 2.21 years to build the rest of the building. So 2/3 of the time that was spent building the whole Burj Khalifa was spent on what? Spent on the foundation. So the majority of the time was spent digging down and building up that foundation to make sure that the tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa, isn't going to fall down, before it's supposed to. So that's how they can ensure that it has a very strong base from which to build. And that's why they spend so much time on it. And again, it relates very well to this presentation, because we can bring it back to our network marketing organizations, how we're going to start to build them. Okay? When a typical skyscraper construction begins, as we see here, it can take sometimes more than 3 years, as we've shown, okay, before it rises out of the ground. But then once it's out of the ground, then it tends to go much faster. In the case of the Burj Khalifa, again, it's got 163 floors, and they did that in 2.21 years. Okay, so that's 73 floors per year compared to the time of 3.8 years that it took for them to build the foundation. Everything speeds up once you're at ground level and going up. Okay, so what we'd like you to do for this presentation is start to picture a skyscraper as your organization, as your network business, as you begin to build it into a skyscraper, because that's what it's going to be one day. And so what are you going to have to do to build it into that superstructure? How much digging are you going to have to do to make sure that you're down to bedrock, so that you build down first before you start to build up? Okay, again, that's what this presentation is about. So we'll go back to the basics. You began by sponsoring 5 serious people, as we remember back to the first presentation that we did, 2 times 2 equals 4. We have those 5 serious people that we sponsored, and at that point, we started to dig our foundation. We haven't started to build any sort of tower. We started to dig our foundation, and we're using basic tools like a shovel, like a spade, in our hands, digging down, us and the 4 other people that we sponsored. 5 other people that we sponsored. Okay, so we dig down with those shovel and spades, and we start to make our excavation for the foundation. Okay, so then the next thing, when you dig down to the second level, the analogy is, okay, you're teaching your people to sponsor 25 new people, as we mentioned again in the first presentation. So with this 25 people, now you're getting to a level where it's kind of like bringing a bulldozer in, because you got 25 strong, digging and digging, and you are building, you're getting closer and closer now to the bedrock that you have to hit. Okay, the idea of the bulldozer is that you're speeding that process up. You're speeding that process up. All right. So then, to take it one step further, at the point where you've taught your people how to teach the people in the group to sponsor and teach, then you're on the way to hitting bedrock. Okay. And at that point, you can compare it to bringing in a steam shovel. They call them steam shovels in the States. It's like this excavator that takes a lot of soil at once and allows you to do excavation very quickly. And then you hit bedrock. Okay, that's the point where you hit bedrock. When you see the 125 third level people, if you remember back again, that means your 5 are sponsoring 5 each, which makes 25, and then those 25 are sponsoring 25 each. I mean, sorry, 5 each to make 125. So now you're at your third level. And at that third level, that's the point where you hit bedrock. That's the point where you can start to build now. You can start going up. So what do you do then as you start going up? Well, the first thing you do is your 4th level there, those 125 are going out and sponsoring 5 people each. Right, so that brings you to 625. That's your 4th level. So 625 plus the rest of the levels. If you remember back how we added it up and become 780 people, right? And now you got 780 people in your organization. You just start to see the first floor coming in. People can start to see you as an organization, and you begin to notice too that things get their own momentum and start building up faster, much faster than that first stage took to build the foundation, to excavate down and build the foundation. Okay, so we've reached that level, and what some of the things that you can expect, again, is the speed at which you start to rise now with this momentum that you have once you're down to 4 levels deep. Okay? Even if it's only one of your lines at 4 levels deep, that's the key, right? Is to have at least one line down to 4, and then that's where you'll really start to see people building the first floors quite a bit faster than whatever was happening before that to get down to your bedrock. Okay. Again, back to the salesperson. They built 131st line and 652nd line people, and then they move on to something else just before hitting the bedrock, just before getting to level 3, and they walk away from it because it's discouraging. They don't seem to be getting out of second gear. They have a lot of people buying product, but they can't seem to build their organization because they haven't given any instruction to their second line that they have to sponsor and teach the next line down, etc. So they're left with either walking away or getting busy and getting down to third gear. So this is what you want to avoid, really, is this salesman type of organization, where we've shown this already in the first couple of presentations, where you have 130 people on the first line of sponsors. Yes, they're far from hitting bedrock, because each one of the 5 that they've been instructing, you must go out and sponsor 5 people each. All of those people, because they don't have any instruction, become basically product users or wholesale buyers of product. They're stuck at the second level. They're at first level, essentially, but they're stuck within the organization at your second level. And that total amount is also 780 people, but non-productive, really, except for buying product. So yes, you are moving product every month. You are getting commissions from product, but beyond that, you're not building deep down within the organization, and therefore everything gets stuck there. And that's where the salesperson tends to get discouraged, because they're not making any progress, because they didn't teach to sponsor and teach, essentially. Okay? There is no solid foundation sitting on bedrock. They're sitting in soft ground, even though they're wide. And when you're wide like that, there's no way to go up, right? You're not built on a solid rock. You're not built on a solid bedrock, excuse me. And therefore your buildings can't get tall, because otherwise they'll just crumble and fall. And if we can refer back to the last presentation we did on the trip to California, sponsoring of 130 people can be, compared to getting into first gear, but doing it way too many times, right? You're getting yourself into first gear, but it's done at 130 times. Whereas in the system that we want to get to, where we're building deep, we want to get into first gear only 5 times, right? And then those 5 get into second gear. Excuse me, they get into first gear and you get into second gear. They get into second gear, you get into third gear, etc. So that's the idea there, right? These guys, all they did was sponsored 5, and they end up being product users, and therefore it's very difficult for them to get out of second gear until they make the choice to begin to train and show people how to sponsor and teach the next levels down. Okay? And that's really where the key is. All right, so we've told you just avoid at all costs getting into a situation where you have this salesperson organization structure. The biggest way to avoid that is by learning the first 4 presentations that we've gone through on YouTube here, and begin to use them with your downlines right away. Don't get stuck in second gear. Build your foundation deep and actually get down to bedrock. And please don't leave for something new. If you're feeling discouraged at this point, stay for another 60 days, stay for another 90 days. This is the advice that I got as well in the times when you think, is it even worth it? Stay for another 60 to 90 days and keep digging down. How do you dig down? As we've shown you, it's important to dig deep by adding levels and by teaching and sponsoring down to the next level. All right, so don't leave for something new. Just dig deep and you will reach third gear. You will then, once you're in third gear, that's the point that you hit bedrock and you start building. Okay? So then people will see that your building's coming out of the ground, and that's at the point where you're shifting into fourth gear or high gear. In the later presentations, particularly in presentation number 9, it's called Motivation and Attitude. It really goes into the details of why it's so important to build deep into the organization. Okay, so we'll go through that at that point. But more importantly, we go to presentation 5 here, or before we go to presentation 5, just remember that as soon as possible, learn these and tell them to your downline. Okay, take these slides exactly as we've done here, and they're for your use. As we've seen, it's a very good way to introduce people, and it fills a gap really where there's not that much training of step to step how to start to build your organization to make sure that it's successful and that it's long term and can stay for a long time as a successful organization. Okay. So I wish you all the best as you're digging down deep and finding the bedrock, and then starting to build, and people will begin to see your building rise out of the ground as you continue on in your journey to build a successful multi-level marketing organization. Thanks once again. I'm Rob Lemke, lifestyle trainer, and it's been my pleasure to go through these first 4 presentations with you. Hope to see you in the next training session, the presentation number 5, as soon as we get that up on YouTube. Thanks again. Bye, and best of luck.